Hi, everyone. I'm Kiana Gibbons-Jarvis from Imperial County Office of Education, and we'd like to welcome you to our second session of our social and emotional learning community of practice. I'd like to just take a minute and let the rest of the training team introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Why don't you call us out? There you go.
Okay. That's Denise.
Robin Bates.
Jeanette Montaño.
Erica Morquecho.
Miriam Bell.
And
John.
I think I'm last.
Yeah.
John Pazarczyk.
Yes, and this is a joint effort between the Curriculum Department, the Student Wellbeing Department, and the Office of Higher Education. All right, so as always, we love to see your faces. So if you're camera ready, we would love if you switch there. It just helps us get some energy back and sort of see your reactions, read the room a little bit better. If you're not willing to go there, we are fine with it. We totally get it. But thank you for showing us your faces if you can. And also, now's a good time to switch it to mute if you haven't done so already. Our DJ might also mute if we forget and there's some noise coming through. But our group is growing, but there'll be times where we ask you to type in the chat or just unmute and ask a question or say what you have to say. If you do that, just go ahead and tell us who you are and where you're from and say what you have to say. So we'll ask for your interaction and your engagement as we move through the day. Our goals for this session are to have you experience some routines and processes for building your own emotional intelligence. You know, some of us in the training team come from the classroom world, and some of us come from the counseling world and the the mental health world, and we don't want to move it exactly to the classroom yet. We are taking care of ourselves today. We're going to keep our focus on self-care, building on the message from last time. And today we really want to clarify the brain-body connection in terms of stress and develop a plan of action for your own self-care. We are all feeling all kinds of things, right? We've got to be feeling all kinds of ways, as the kids say these days. And so we're going to give you a chance to reflect on that, be proactive about that, and connect and reflect with other educators about that. And in order to keep it active and keep it personal, we want you to make sure that you have a piece of paper and something to write with close by, or open yourself another window and start yourself a Word document or a Google Doc, or you can take this presentation, make a copy by going to File in the upper left corner, dropping down your menu and hitting make a copy, and then you can take notes right under each slide. So whichever way you like to do it, one aspect of self-care could be journaling. And so we wanted to model and give you a chance for it today. So take a second, get yourself ready, because we hope that by the end of this time you would have the makings of an action plan for self-care. And if you've been with me in anything lately, you know we're going to start by asking, how are you feeling? How are you doing? How's it going? There is so much going on from the time that I first started doing this presentation. And I just want us all to get in the mindset, get in the frame to to feel these emotions. So take a second and a few deep breaths, if you would, in through your nose and blow out through your mouth. I'm going to count us a couple of rounds of 4. If your hands are crossed right now or your feet are crossed right now, I'd love it if you'd uncross. If you would just sort of feel the full weight of your chair that you're sitting in, put your hands on your lap. And relax into your chair as you breathe in for 4 and out for 4. Here we go. Deep breath in, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. And in through your nose. 3, 4. And out. 2, 3. Keep going. If you're holding on to any tension in your body, please let it go. If you're clenching your teeth, give it a little move around and let it go as you breathe out. 2, 3, 4. Thank you for doing that, getting into your alert state, ready for learning. And the question is, how are you feeling? And some of you have seen this presentation. We hope to sprinkle a little more and layer on what you know about the mood meter, but you might be feeling all kinds of things, but I want you to feel it in terms of these two things: pleasantness inside of your body. Pleasant can equate to maybe warmth or calm, however you describe this feeling inside that is desirable, it's pleasant, versus maybe unsettled or rigid. Maybe it's kind of a colder feeling on the inside, more stress feeling on the inside in terms of pleasantness. So kind of think of how you're feeling in terms of pleasantness. And then also think about your energy level. How is it? You know, I just had you calm down a little bit with breathing, but coming into this session, are you feeling on empty, or are you feeling sort of energized? And how is that displaying on the outside? So in terms of pleasantness and in energy, in the chat box right now, where those two things intersect, pleasantness and energy, what color do you land in when it comes to where those two things intersect? Just type it in the chat, and you might record it in your journal. You might even just say your color out loud to yourself. But I see the chat populating as you figure out where, in terms of pleasantness, low to high, energy, low to high. And as you think about that color, I also want you to think about the story behind it. Like, it took a second for the colors to start popping up in the chat box, because you're kind of thinking through, what made me feel pleasant or not, or what's making me, have high energy or not. What's the story behind the color that you just chose? But why? Help yourself sort of understand. You can even talk straight into the camera if you like, or you might jot it down in your journal. What's causing that color? And as you think about the cause, I'm wondering if you have a word, an emotion word that you're able to connect to the color, that you're able to say, yeah, I'm feeling in the red, and the reason behind that is, and if I had to name an emotion, it would be rage. It would be peeved. It would be annoyed. Do you have a word for what you're feeling? So believe it or not, lots and lots of people have a difficult time coming up with a word. It's not the easiest thing for grown adults to talk about their emotions and to talk about them in detail. We kind of keep it surface. I'm fine, I'm good, happy, mad, sad, glad. But to really have a conversation about those words, that whole spectrum of words, is a challenge. And there's room for us all to grow. And so this is a tool. This is called the mood meter. It helps us to label our emotions. So I just want to do a 2-word check-in after you get a chance to study this for a minute or two, and to kind of reflect on the questions down the side of the screen. So go to your color that you said you were, and I want you to see if your word is there. And maybe your word didn't land in the color that you're thinking of, and that's okay. I also want you to think about whether you see a word that's even more close to what you're feeling, even more precise. This comes from Dr. Mark Brackett, and he talks about getting granular with our emotions, being able to really nail it and pinpoint it as a way to be able to control it, or at least regulate it. And you might be saying, I feel this, but that, and those are landing in two different colors. So there might be some surprising combinations going on within yourself right now. So as you see it and pinpoint those words, just start populating the chat. Two-word check-in. Erica's monitoring the chat. Maybe she can call out some of those emotions that we're all feeling.
We have pensive, overwhelmed, nervous, stressed, grateful, worried, excited, positive, disappointed, anxious, overwhelmed, processing, peace, confusion, disappointment, calm, lively and inspired.
There are some days I feel all of those by lunchtime. And this last week has been a true example of all of that. Thank you, Erica. So keep those coming. It helps us. It helps us to know. I'm going to pass it along. Ooh, we got some jots on our slides.
All right,
I'm going to
everybody.
pass it
This
along
is
to
Robin.
Robin. Go ahead.
This is Robin. So all of those emotions, those feelings that you just named in the chat, how are you expressing those? Because one thing that we just talked about with Kiana was name it to tame it. And so we've got to name it, which you just did, label it. And that will hopefully tame the way that we express it. And it kind of depends on what the emotion is. It could be a positive emotion. It could be a negative emotion. How is that being expressed, and is it appropriate for where you are right now? One way that we can talk about expressing emotions and also regulating emotions is through a tool called the meta moment. And so the meta moment is what we can do to avoid a rash decision, or perhaps an action that we'll regret. We can experience the meta moment in two different ways. There's a proactive way and there's a responsive way. And basically what it is when something's happening and you sense those emotions starting to gain some control over you, we need to stop and visualize our best self and take a breath and get a space in between where we're feeling that emotion and what we're about to do or say. We want to have a pause button per se, where we can give ourselves a minute to change our reaction. So you visualize your best self. If it's proactive, maybe you already thought through some of the things that you can do, because proactive things are things that you know are coming. Maybe you know that you're about to have a conversation with someone that you're not looking forward to. You know it's going to be challenging. You're worried that they're going to be defensive, so you think about that ahead of time. Okay, so if they do get defensive, how am I going to handle that? That's your proactive meta moment. But oftentimes things happen unexpectedly. We weren't expecting it to go this way, right? We said something that somebody wasn't happy with, or we did something that someone wasn't happy with, or someone else that we're interacting with, perhaps our child is being extremely disrespectful and is getting our dander up. So these unexpected things that happen, the more we practice the proactive meta moment, the easier this responsive, unplanned meta moment can become. So basically, you know, stop. Maybe you have to turn away. Maybe you have to change your gaze to somewhere else, just to give you that moment to visualize where you want to go with this, come up with a strategy, and then move forward. So that's the meta moment. Go ahead, Kiana, next slide. And that's going to help us with our regulation. So we have to regulate our emotions. We have to think to ourselves, okay, so you just named and labeled an emotion. You may or may not be expressing it right now, but what you have to think about too is this a feeling you want to be feeling right now? Do you want to feel this feeling more? Do you want it to continue? Or do you want it to stop? Do you want to feel it less? And so what are you going to do? What can you do? What things work for you to move to a different color on that mood meter? If you're in the red and you want to be in the green, or you really need to be in the green to do whatever it is you need to be doing right now, how can you regulate yourself to get there? And so we're going to address some ways to regulate and change our state throughout the rest of this presentation. Okay, next slide, Kiana. Okay, so this slide really puts together what we just did. We just did what's called a ruler check-in, where we did these 4 things. You recognized the emotion that you were feeling right now. You thought about what was causing it. You labeled it. We talked about how you're expressing it and how you can regulate it if you want to continue feeling it or if you want to change what you're feeling. So that is this is a nice slide that puts that ruler method all together. Also on this slide, we have our social emotional learning wheel, because one of the things that we told you on the flyer we wanted to talk to you about was, what are the social emotional learning expectations in California? And so if you were to Google social emotional learning, CDE, California Department of Ed, it would take you to a list of resources, and one of them is this one. It's CASEL. CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, and they have these SEL foundations. These are the 5 foundations, and I'm going to take you through those on the next slide.
Got it.
Okay, so we've got our little journal picture here. So I want you to be thinking about these competencies and how you're doing with them, as I mentioned them briefly. And you're going to be kind of rating yourself right now on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being I have a lot of room to grow in this competency. 5 being, I think I have this competency mastered, and somewhere in between. And so right now you're just going to kind of use your own rubric of 1 to 5 and how you're feeling. Eventually we will continue working with these competencies in future meetings, and you'll become much more aware of what it means to be a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. So self-awareness, this is your ability to recognize your emotions. It's like the R, U, and the L of the ruler method. So think about your self-awareness. Are you aware of what you're feeling when you're feeling it? Give yourself a ranking. How about self-management? Are you able to regulate what you're feeling? Are you able to express those emotions appropriately, or develop some strategies, some actions, some habits of mind that you can do to manage that stress? How about responsible decision making? Are you able to make appropriate choices when you're feeling emotional? Are you able to use a meta moment, take a meta moment and breathe and pause, visualize your best self? How about social awareness? Are you able to have some empathy for others and consider what they may be feeling in a situation? You know, we can all be feeling the same emotion, or we may all label it the same word, but how we express it and how we experience it can be very different. So can we see that in others? And then our relationship skills. Are we able to maintain relationships with people that may not hold the same values as us, may not agree with us on everything, but can we still have a positive relationship with them? Can we establish that and maintain that? Okay, so that's just a very brief overview of those 5 social emotional learning competencies. And what I might ask you to do is whichever one you gave yourself the lowest rating in, maybe kind of think through that lens for the rest of this presentation, because you're going to get some ideas and strategies as we continue on. Okay. And we also wanted to let you know that all of this information came from Mark Brackett and his book, Permission to Feel. We were lucky enough to sit in on a session with him. And we wanted you to know that we have lots and lots of materials and resources for you. So if Kiana clicks on that ruler method link, you'll see that it will take you to a folder. And you have pretty much everything that we've discussed today so far with the mood meter, and the ruler check-in is here. Plus even more. So we invite you to make sure that you get this PowerPoint or these slides, and that you click on that and check out that folder. Okay, so I am now going to turn it over to Jeanette, who is going to talk to us about aspects of self-care.
Thank you so much, Robin. So we're moving into aspects of self-care. So what does that mean? We'll go to the next slide, Kiana. So what are they, and what does that mean for each one of us sitting here today? So we're talking about the workplace and our professional setting. It doesn't matter what position you hold, it's just your workplace. Think about what you do for a living every day. We're talking about physical self-care, psychological self-care, emotional self-care, your relationships self-care, and your spiritual self-care. Everyone's different. So what works for me might not work for everyone in this group. So you need to think about, as we go through each one of these, start thinking about how it relates to you and your setting and your environment. Everybody can take a different path, and it's okay. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. So when you think about your self-care at work, do you take the time to get involved in activities that will help you become a better employee? So what does that mean? That means, are you the type of professional that when they come to you and say, hey, there's a perfect opportunity for you to participate in training, would you like to attend? Do you say yes, or do you say no? Because the majority of the time, if you are the type of employee that says, no, I don't have time, that's not professional self-care. If you know you need it. If there is something that you are lacking, or you know that you need to learn within your work setting, you want to make sure that you are taking the time to learn, to take advantage of professional development when it's available, to engage with other people within your work environment that know about that particular task that you were tasked with that maybe you don't have enough knowledge of. The worst thing that we can do in this situation is say, no, I don't want to bother anybody. I don't want to go ask any questions because they have a lot of work. We don't want to do that. Okay, if we are taking care of ourselves at the workplace, we're going to make sure that if we don't understand something, that we share with someone and say, hey, I don't understand. Is there somebody that I can go to? And not being afraid to ask for help. Next one, Kiana. When we talk about physical self-care, is your self-care as important as everything else in your life? How do you stay fit and healthy? And that doesn't mean we're talking about, oh my gosh, I have to go work out for 3 hours. No. But what do you do to develop a routine for yourself that will allow you to sleep well, to sleep your 6 to 8 hours. Well, 8 hours is the recommendation. That you get some exercise before and after work regularly, whether it's a soft walk, hard walk, long walk, or aerobics, whatever it is that makes you feel better. Or if it's biking, like John, he likes to bike and he goes biking everywhere. And do you aim for a healthy diet? We can't say that we are taking care of ourselves when we're skipping our meals and we're not sleeping well, and we are, if you're anything like me, I would sleep about 2 to 3 hours before, and it eventually caught up to me. Okay, not aiming for a healthy diet. I used to skip my meals during lunchtime because I had so much work. I'd rather get my work done, and so I kind of pushed my lunchtime to the side, and I didn't take advantage of it. So taking lunch breaks is extremely important. Going for walks during lunchtime, or just getting that brain break during lunchtime, is also important. And the one thing that I really want to emphasize is, I want you to reflect on, are you the type of employee that takes a sick leave day when you are sick? Or are you the type that pushes through and says, I can do it, I'm just gonna go to work? If you're like me, you probably go to work. Even though you're halfway needing to be in bed. That's the worst thing that we can do to our body and to our brain, because eventually it does catch up. So when we talk about the psychological self-care, what is it that you do to help yourself balance and help you be clear in your brain? Do you make time to engage with positive friends and family members after work? Do you make time to relax, to just listen to soothing music, or just to stop for a moment during the week? Do you disconnect from work outside of your work hours? Do you engage in a non-work hobby like walking or just sitting outside, reading, something different that has nothing to do with work? Do you seek to engage in conversations with experienced colleagues to help you think through things when something is not going in the right direction? Do you keep a reflective journal? Kind of like to think about, how did your day go? What could have gone better? Or what are some things that are bothering you? How is it that you're feeling that day? Your balance is important. And it's important that you pay attention to the people that you have around you, because if you leave work and you're overwhelmed and you go to a group of people that feed you with negativity, it's going to make it worse. Rather than going to somebody that's going to fill you with positive, it's going to make you feel better. So having that balance, it's easier said than done. And the emotional self-care. Do you allow yourself to experience a full range of emotions? Do you give yourself permission to feel? I think that's an important question. So developing friendships that are supportive, that will allow you to vomit all over them when you need to, and so that you can share what you're feeling inside. Whether you're right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's the point that you have to be able to just say what you're feeling and having them catch it, and then having them help you reflect. So reflecting on 3 good things every day. What are 3 things that went well daily, rather than focusing on the negative, because there's always room for improvement in every single day. Do you go to the movies and just enjoy and relax? Do you make the time to do the things that make you happy? Do you have someone to talk to when things are not going well, and just to help you cope through different situations and scenarios, whether it's work related or whether it's personal? Do you have that confidant, somebody that you can reach out to and just say what you need to say when you need permission to feel? And most importantly, I think this one's going to hit home for a lot of you, the relationship self-care. How do you maintain your healthy, supportive relationships to ensure that you are well connected to people, not just at work, but also outside of work? Do you prioritize your family and children's events? Do you attend special events with them? Do you make them a priority? Or are you the type of employee that has missed baseball games or recitals, or were you late because of work when it wasn't necessary? Do you choose work or everything having to do with work before your priorities at home? I think that that's going to hit home for a lot of you, because I'm going to have to tell you that I've been very guilty about this. I did miss baseball games and I did miss important events because of work, and not because I had to. It was a choice that I made. And I learned the hard way, and I'll share that with you shortly. But arriving to work on time and leaving on time is also important. I think that if you are in education, leaving on time is not always easy, and many times it's by choice. Nobody's holding us down, nobody's keeping us there. Sometimes we choose to work 2 to 3 hours longer daily because we want to get things done. So this is something that we really need to reflect on. How do we manage our time during the day so that it doesn't affect us at the end of the day? Because if we don't manage our time during the day, then we're left at the end of the day wanting to finish what we didn't finish throughout. So just keep that in mind. One of the things that I'd like for you to really think about is consider developing a self-care plan for yourself. Just think about, what is it that you do on a daily basis to give yourself brain breaks? Who do you surround yourself with? What do you do first thing in the morning? What do you do right after work? Where is your cell phone right after work? Do you give yourself those brain breaks? And I share this because I'm married to another educator. He happens to be in a higher position and he has a more demanding job, and yet he finds the opportunity to have a well-rested night. So he goes to sleep very early because he wants to get his 8 hours of sleep. Whereas I would go to sleep at 1 o'clock, 2 in the morning, get 2 to 3 hours of sleep. He will take his lunch every day by noon, no ifs or buts. And I would skip lunch almost every single day. He would leave work by no later than 5:30. We get off at 5, and I'd be at work by, until 6:37. Eventually it caught up to me, and I'm a very strong-willed person. I can handle a lot of things and I can multitask. But I think I was in total denial. People kept on asking me how I was doing last year, and I said I was doing great until they wheeled me out in a wheelchair. I ended up fainting at work, and I had to be wheeled out, and my body was not well. My stress level was so high, the doctor asked me, "Are you stressed?" And I said, "No." "Are you anxious?" And I said, "No, I feel really good." My brain was in total denial, but my body was asking for help. When you hear somebody say, "I'm very anxious and I have an anxiety attack," those attacks are real. I used to not believe in it. I didn't support it. When I heard it, I was like, "Oh, they're exaggerating." It's not an exaggeration. It feels like you're having a heart attack. It feels like you're going to die. And unless you've lived through it, you would not be able to connect to somebody that is going through that. What I can tell you is that having a plan, a self-care plan, does help tremendously. A walk in the morning makes a big difference. Disconnecting once in a while from the laptop and having a conversation with a human being makes a huge difference. Being surrounded with people that are willing to hear you and speak the truth to you makes a difference. So just thinking about, I created a plan that worked for me. Not, your plan it has to be something that you can live up to, that you have to be consistent, that it's something that you will revisit and reassess and start with plan A. Doesn't work, go to plan B. Doesn't work, go to plan C. But make it work for you. The plan that my husband has been on has worked for him for years. He's always asked me to develop one, and I never listened until I crashed last year. Yeah. I've been on a plan since last year, and I've actually reassessed my plan, and I implemented some other things about 2 weeks ago when we met Dr. Woodruff, and it made a world of a difference in my life. Simple things that are doable. If you don't want to end up like me in a stress hole, I need to tell you that if you allow yourself to get there, once you get there, it will be very difficult to get out. Stress attacks your body, your mind, your emotions, and your behaviors in ways that sometimes you don't realize. You carry it on your shoulders, you carry it on your facial expressions. It's in your sleep. It's in your reactions, and sometimes you think you're fine. Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm not mad. I'm not in a bad mood. I'm not irritated. I'm good. I don't have a lot of work, but you do. Your brain does not function normal when you are overly stressed. And there's many different ways that you can get rid of that stress easily. So just make sure that you are aware of your body and how it's speaking to your mind and how it's speaking to your emotions. I am a true believer in this. And go ahead, Kiana. I'm a true believer in this. I believe that creating a self-care plan makes a world of a difference. I have my children on one. They exercise every day. They do P90X and all kinds of things with their little weights. It works. It does work. So just keep that in mind. Consider it.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Jeanette. I just want you to know that the chat is going off and people are saying guilty or I'm working on that or me too. So that notion is resonating and you're all going to get a chance to chat about it in a breakout room. So
Was a comment that resonated with one of the participants, that maybe as your home environment begins to have children that leave their home, you think that allows you to put more hours at work because you no longer have that little child at home that takes away some of that time. So that can lead to trying to work more hours because we don't have littles to take care of necessary at home. But keeping in consideration that we are the littles now, and making sure that you keep that self-care and respect for yourself as well.
It's very easy to dive into work and into life and worry about everybody else around you and forget about you. You're the last person you pay attention to. So today I really want you to focus on looking at yourself and really thinking about what do you do for you.
So we're going to take a 7-minute chat break. John's sending us to breakout rooms. You'll see a little window pop up. All you have to do is hit the send to room. If you are joining from a cell phone, you will remain in the main room with John. Is that okay, John?
Yep, but you
All
know,
right.
they may be able to join the breakout room. I had someone the other day in their breakout room on an iPhone, so we'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to breakout rooms. And the questions are on the screen, so that's what you're talking about when you get there.
All right, here we go.
All right. So welcome back from the breakout room, everyone. We're going to continue kind of making that brain-body connection. So far, you've learned a little bit about the ruler method for self-regulation. And Jeanette shared a little bit about, kind of told her story about self-care and asked us some questions to reflect on. So now we want to just really drive home what's going on in your body when it comes to stress. And it's science. We can't deny it. I'm going to turn it over to our gals here, Miriam and Denise.
Thank you, Kiana. Thank you. So hi, everyone. This has just been wonderful. I am so pleased to see what's happening here. Again, I'm Miriam and my pal Denise. We're going to take you through this piece. We're going to walk you through it. We have to touch on the brain, sorry, but we're going to make this very non-threatening because we have to just make those connections, right? So if you recall, when we met with Dr. Woodruff, he took us through a pamphlet, a handout, really, and he really was talking about how we need to make stress work for us, work for you, make stress work for you, not against you. That was the thing that resonated the most. He talked about, fighting that negative stress and what strategies to implement. How do you do that? He talked about, eating very specific kinds of food. He calls it anti-inflammatory meals. He talked about, that listening to calming music. what does he call that again? The music, it was called,
It's Jeanette's new favorite.
what is it
Liquid.
again?
It
Liquid
is
music.
called liquid mind music.
Liquid
Yeah.
mind music. Thank you. So he talked a lot about that. He talked about meditation. Sometimes that has a negative connotation, meditation. All it is mindfulness, right? He talked about mindfulness. He talked about positive, effective statements, pretty much affirmations. I've heard the word here today, validation, laughing more, you know, implementing exercise routine, and I'm a sleep advocate, right? So those are the things that that we're going to be touching on in terms of the science. What does the science say? And Jeanette, I heard her say, you know, body and brain. I heard her say balance. I heard her say eventually it catches up, right? So we're going to be building on what we heard and learned from Dr. Woodruff and looking at how that correlates to the brain and how that impacts the body. So take it away, Denise.
And I just want to say, Denise, before you get on a roll, I just want to say to everyone, if you weren't with us for the first, know that I'll have a folder with everything from session 1 and from today, all in one folder linked in this, this session. Go ahead, Denise, take it away.
Thanks, Q. Yes, so we're just going to jump in here and define stress a little bit for you. I know we've all felt it, but have we actually defined it? Maybe not. And so it's important to note that the National Institute of Mental Health defines stress as just simply the brain's response to any demand, okay? So given that, not all stress is bad. We all have stress on a daily basis. Sometimes it's good stress, sometimes it's bad stress, right? It's just the way our body responds. I think the most important thing to note is how harmful it can be to you really depends on its intensity, duration, and management. And what does that mean, right? How intense is it? How long does it last? And what do we do about it? What do I do about my stress in my body? Next slide, please. Okay, it can take a variety of forms, right? So sometimes we have a lot of stress as a result of a single short-term event. I'm sure if we think about that, we can think about an event that caused us tremendous stress, or we can think of events that cause us to have, you know, multiple stressful events throughout our day. And other stress happens due to the recurring condition. So sometimes it's perpetual, it's ongoing, it's daily. And those are the things that we kind of need to be aware of. But I'm sorry. Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, when recurring conditions cause stress, okay, that's when it can become toxic, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but for now, Miriam's going to talk to you about the functions of the brain and what actually happens in there.
So Denise mentioned short-term stress and long and recurring stress. Just to really give you a super quick example before I get to the brain aspect, you know, short-term, just to put it into context, right? Because people need context. You know, short-term stress is having an argument with a loved one. That can be associated with short-term stress. Long-term stress, recurring stress, is managing a long-term illness, right? A demanding job. That's really what brings us into this forum together, right? So onto this slide here. This is not about making you an expert on the brain, right? It's not so that you leave knowing this, right? That's what the internet is for. You can look this up and find where, but we're gonna be touching on 5 areas of the brain, or 5 modalities, right? We're gonna touch on the amygdala, even more than you see there, right? We're gonna talk about the amygdala, the hypothalamus, cortisol, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex, right? So essentially, so while all stress triggers physiological reactions, it's chronic stress. That's what we're after here today. It's chronic stress that is specifically problematic because it has significant harm to the functioning of the body and the brain. So essentially, stress, go back one. Stress is a chain reaction. It's a domino effect, right? Mm-hmm. When someone experiences a stressful event, it triggers certain reactions in the brain, period, right? So you could stay on this slide. When a stressful event is experienced, essentially, the amygdala, which is the area of the brain that contributes to emotional processing, okay, it sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is the area of the brain that functions like a command center, in which it communicates to the rest of the body through the nervous system so that the person has the energy to fight or flee. So you can go on to the next slide. So basically, that fight or flight response is responsible for the outward physical reactions most people associate with stress. And we could probably relate to this, right? Heart starts to race, increased heart rate. And as you're thinking about a response or an experience you've had in the past, you can actually start perhaps feeling these symptoms right now. Increased heart rate, heightened senses, see, hear, smell, taste, touch, right? Very, very heightened. Not a whole lot of rational and reasoning and thinking. It is fight or flight, right? So heightened senses, deeper intake of oxygen that is correlated specifically to the increased heart rate, right? And then a rush of adrenaline. People actually feel that occurring in their body. They feel that adrenaline by either cold or heat moving through their body. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So finally, we're talking about the physiology, right? Physiological effects of stress in the brain. Finally, a hormone called cortisol is released, which helps to restore the energy lost in the response. It's a good thing, right? When the stressful event is over, cortisol levels, they fall, and the body returns to stasis, stability, normal, if you will, right? So stress is not necessarily problematic, right? It's not necessarily problematic. The buildup, the crux of the matter is in the buildup of cortisol in the brain. Too much of it is a bad thing, okay? It's the buildup of cortisol in the brain. That's what has the long-term effects. Therefore, chronic stress can lead to health problems, okay? Let's move on. I'm going to wrap this up. We're almost done on the physiological aspects. So cortisol, right? In moderation, it's perfectly normal, right? Cortisol, that is a hormone that is perfectly normal, perfectly healthy. Why? It restores balance in the body after a stress event. You want that, right? It helps regulate blood sugar levels in cells. You want that. It has utilitarian, practical value, right? In the hippocampus, that is where memories are stored and processed. You want that, right? Stay on this page real quick. Let me just add a little bit of context, right? In terms of cortisol and chronic stress. So it's when chronic stress is experienced, the body makes more cortisol than it has a chance to release. That's when we're getting into problems, right? High levels of cortisol can wear down the brain's ability to function properly. Chronic stress impairs brain function. Okay, that's the science, including loss of sociability, being sociable, and avoiding interactions with others. It actually, the science says that it can kill brain cells and even shrink the size of the brain. It has a shrinking effect on the prefrontal cortex, right? That is the area of the brain responsible for memory and learning, right? It also increases the size of the amygdala, that making the brain more hypersensitive and more receptive to stress. without the ability to combat it. And ultimately can create a brain that becomes predisposed, right? That's a very strong word. It can cause a brain that becomes predisposed to be in a constant fight or flight, constant on alert, constant hypervigilance. So that's the science. Denise is gonna walk. We went through aspects of the brain that impact stress and chronic stress. Denise is now gonna walk you through an exercise. Okay?
So thanks, Miriam. Part of being stressed is sometimes we aren't even aware when we're stressed. We're going through it, and it isn't until we're deeper into that stress hole that we realize, oh my gosh, like I need to do something about this. So I want to take you through an exercise, and I want you to think about how your body reacts when you are stressed. So I want to give you a moment to reflect. I'm going to ask you to think about a stressful moment that you have had recently, or maybe in the past, right? I want to warn you that while you are thinking about this and experiencing, I want you to understand that you might start feeling those same feelings that you felt when you were stressed, right? We did this exercise when we were practicing, and I was like, my hands are getting clammy again, and why is my heart starting to race a bit, right? So just know that that might happen as we go through this exercise, okay? So think about it, take a moment, think about how your body reacts when you are stressed. Think of that stressful time. Feel free to close your eyes and think about that moment, that stressful incident, okay? As you're thinking about that, start identifying what happened in your body physically, okay? I'm thinking about the incident that happened to me. And for me, I notice because I get a tingling sensation that goes through my body, my face gets red, I can feel all the blood rushing to my head, and I get even a little dizzy, okay? So go ahead, think about those things. Thank you. If you're comfortable, please share in the chat box. What happens to the body? If you aren't comfortable with that, we would just like for you to write those in your journal. What happens?
So we have some stomach aches, low energy, shortness of breath, headaches, dizziness, agitated feeling, irritable, even some face flushes, some back pain, tightening of chests, clenching of teeth.
Thank you for sharing those. Those are coming in very quickly. Thank you. So as we move along in this presentation, we want you to keep those in mind because those are going to be important. The more self-awareness we develop about our stress, as Kiana and Robin mentioned in the beginning, if you can name it, you can tame it, right? And so the better we become and developing that level of self-awareness, the sooner we can identify when these things are happening, and we have some tools in our toolbox to address those things, the better we're going to be able to cope with our stress. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Pew.
So obviously, you know, we are getting at toxic stress on the body. That's what we're getting at here. Toxic and chronic stress are interchangeable. We're talking about the same thing. That's what we want to combat here because it's serious, right? All stress is not bad. Absolutely. Stress can be a motivator. It can get us to do something. It could really propel us and push us through a moment, a time when we're not, you know, wanting or feeling it, right? stress is okay if it's short term, if it's short lived. So it's the chronic that becomes toxic. And this is what the science says. This is not me or Denise or Kiana. This is the science. This is what the science says. It absolutely impairs cognitive functioning, your ability to think and reason. It absolutely increases the risk of heart disease. Absolutely, right?
Yes.
It absolutely increases high blood pressure. Such a common thing. You go to the doctor and, my blood pressure is high today. And it wasn't high. I didn't have high blood pressure a year ago. Think about that. Think about where that might be coming from. Diabetes, right? We have a big problem. It's not there are lots of attributes where we can point to what's happening with diabetes. Chronic stress, toxic stress is one of those aspects. So it's something to put on the table to start looking at these health risks, right? It absolutely, sorry folks, not too glamorous here, but it reduces functions of your digestion, your excretion, your reproductive systems in your body. Not glamorous, but highly, highly, highly important, right?
Yep.
Things alter, in a dangerous way. Your immune system, that's our ability to stay healthy and to fight off, germs, especially during this time of, the virus, it impairs immune system. And so we have to pay attention to stress and chronic stress. And then people that have existing illnesses, toxic stress can exacerbate existing illnesses. It can make them worse.
But we know everyone's like, wah, 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 right? Like, this is not the most fabulous of information, but we have good news, right? The brain and the body can recover. This is our message of hope, right? While stress can damage actual neural pathways within your brain, but our brain has what's called plasticity, and we're able to reform and regenerate and recreate those neural pathways when we change our behaviors. And so that's why part of this is having you identify and understand, and we're going to give you tools to do this, because there is hope. We can change. We can take control. Young adults especially have this ability. Their brain rewires very quickly. As we age, we lose our ability to do that so much. And so we want to take this opportunity to identify those things so that we can identify ways that we can start rebuilding those good neural pathways so that we don't develop that pathway that immediately takes us into stress and the fight or flight response. Okay, next cue.
And more good news, right? The brain is a marvelous thing, right? Regardless of age, here's some more good news. We're driving this home, right? We're maybe beating a dead horse on purpose, right? Regardless of age, coping strategies, interventions, activities, they're very, very effective to combat the wear and tear of stress on the brain. They call it stress brain, actually. And then to enable that plasticity, including exercising, right? Healthy eating, proper sleep. Did I say I'm a sleep advocate? That doesn't mean that I get the hours of sleep that I'm supposed to, but there is so much research and science about sleep and our ability to combat stress. We're social creatures, like it or not, right? And I'm not sure about all of the social networking platforms. It's what we have and what we should use. But contact, human to human contact. We'll get there again, don't worry. And then super deep here, right? Finding purpose in one's life. Finding your purpose, that's a whole other segment. And then meditation, mindfulness, being mindful, being self-aware. So Denise?
Yes.
What are you gonna ask them?
So we're going to ask you to pull out your journals again and take a moment to reflect. with regards to what coping strategies do you use in your life? Okay. How do you cope with stress, anxiety? What is it that you do? You know, I recently will admit that I wasn't doing very well in this area. Once we went into the stay-at-home order, I was going a little nuts for a little while, and I recently started going running again, which is I enjoy. How do I say this? I like running. It's not easy, and that's what I like about it. That it gets me out of my thinking brain into don't trip, keep breathing, right? Try to run faster. And so, you know, I was not very, if you would have asked me that question a couple of months ago, my answers would have been very different. So if you're in my boat, that's okay. That's why we're here today. And you may already have something that's very routine for you, and that's fabulous. You get to be an example for the rest of us who are working at this. So think about what coping strategies you use in your life. It doesn't have to be exercise. It could be like mindfulness, meditation. It could be breathing. It could be washing the dishes. That would never be me. That was the thought of that out. But for some people, they love it, right? My husband's outside, like he mows the lawn all day. That's not fabulous for me, but he loves that. That is his stress relief. So think about what those is. I'm seeing prayer, right? Yes, absolutely. So Zumba. Oh, I miss Zumba. I used to love that. Yes.
Sleep.
Oh, that's yes. When we can get it. Right?
Yes.
I could be better about that. So think about that. Write a couple of those in your journal. Stick them in the chat. And keep those in mind as we move forward.
And keep in mind, just real quick about sleep. You know, I wish I could do a dissertation on sleep. It's proper sleep, right? Everything has its ebbs and flows. Everything has its good and bad, right? Sleeping too much is unhealthy. Sleeping not enough is too. So it's you know, we talk about 8 hours of sleep. Well, as we get older, you know, about 6.5 hours is okay. 6.5 to 8 hours is what's recommended for adults. 8 hours if you're lucky, but well, you know, 6.5 to 7 in terms of that REM sleep that's good stuff in terms of the body being able to repair and rejuvenate. Okay.
Giving us just a little time check. We're down to 9 minutes here.
And so we're in closing. You could start it off, Denise, and I'll end it.
Yeah, so in closing, as we know, stress is it's a part of life, y'all. It's part of our life, and it's good and bad, but we know that chronic stress can have real effects on us, and so on the brain and the body. So understanding how to combat that can help us to promote our overall health.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, John, you want to explain what we're going to do in the breakout room for the last, 5 minutes there?
So thank you, guys. So we're going to end it with an optimistic closure. And if you've been to one of Q's trainings, or maybe Robin and ours, you may have seen this before, where it's called Suit Yourself. And we really want you, so we came with a purpose today to have you walk away with some tools to be more socially, emotionally learning literate, I guess, and to really do some thinking about your lifestyle and taking care of yourself. These are unprecedented times. So what we'd like you to do is, if you look at the four suits there, right? We'd like you to just kind of discuss something that you are going to walk away with, right? Is it something from your heart? Is it a club, something that you can, a new idea that are going to grow? Is it a diamond that this is like, a great nugget of wisdom that I learned today? Is it a spade that will help you kind of maybe springboard you into some research on your own? So we can either, should we go in breakout rooms, Q, or should we just have them put it in the chat room right now?
Yeah, if you'll just monitor the time, a tight 4 minutes.
Okay.
So let's go.
All right. So you guys ready? So you're gonna go in the breakout rooms. This is your talking points. I think someone said it the other time. It's good to be in breakout rooms to talk. So I'm gonna open them, and I'll see you guys in 4 minutes. Here we go.
Everybody, as you come back, all we want to say is the last slide of the slide deck has our feedback form. We would love it, love it, love it if you just gave that a click and went to our quick feedback form to let us know how it was for you, and anything that you would like more information about. We're going to take a break in the COP for the summer. We can see the exhaustion on everybody's face and just kind of the need to recharge. But when we come back into the fall, we will revisit and go deeper with all of these things. That wheel that Robin showed you, really, each of those 5 competencies, you know, could have their own week. Each of those things could have their own institute. There's that much stuff out there. So we can't wait to dig into this with you. Also on that last slide, you've got the ICOE SEL COP participant folder. So when you click into that, just know anything from the last time and from this time will make it into the participant folder. You've got all of those ruler method resources. I also put in a resource from our friends at Orange County Department of Ed, some calming practices led by their, she's kind of the statewide lead. Her name is Lucy. Their breathing exercises and mindfulness exercises. You've got the slides from today, the mood meter. You remember the cootie catchers? Or a fortune teller. There's one for reading comprehension there that's, you know, kind of directs questions about characters and social emotional learning. And then just a little hand exercise to reiterate what Miriam taught us about the brain and the pieces. And you can sort of use your hand to think about, man, that is my brain. Those are the parts and how they affect each other. So that's all from us. We'll hang out on the line for a couple of minutes if you have any specific questions or just want to say hey to anybody on our team. Otherwise, we wish you well. We wish you the best well-being. Stay safe out there, and remember to breathe.
Anna was gonna say something.
Yes, on the links on the chats, I found some apps that help you disconnect. They'll turn off your phone and will let you connect to the internet if that's. We were having a discussion about that, so they're on the link on the chat.
Oh, maybe we can throw them into the participants folders later.
And as always,
well.
if you signed up through OMS, you will get a follow-up email with all of these links so that you don't lose it. Thanks, everybody.